morning, ladies. Welcome to week 7 of our Bible study, Fruitful, a study of Colossians. I've kind of shifted for the second week in a row my where I've been sitting, and that is because we had one of our daughters here with us for over a week, and usually the wall I use as a backdrop right now has a guest bed on it. And then another one of our adult daughters came. So we had a really busy weekend. So I apologize for getting this up on a Monday morning instead of a Sunday afternoon. But I had a great time with my family while they were here. We are going to be talking about decontamination this week. Have you ever had food poisoning, or have you ever taken care of someone who has had food poisoning? It is not pretty. It is not pretty. And food poisoning is when food that is supposed to be healthful or good for you has become contaminated by a pathogen. A lot of times, those pathogens are from a food worker who has not washed their hands correctly, and the food becomes infected. And that's gross. That's really gross if you think about it. And so as we've been talking about fruitfulness, the idea is we need to protect the fruit that's growing from pathogens. That's one of the main reasons why we talked about boundaries last week. But this week, how to decontaminate and protect from pathogens. So we're going to be talking about decontamination through discipline. Or a different way to say it is practices that protect from pathogens. And so we're focusing on discipline this week. I don't know if you remember when I talked about the friends that gave me the avocados and that their avocado tree took a long time to grow. Well, on that same visit, they also sent me home with homegrown lemons and oranges. And in their environment with land and on the tree, the fruit became dirty just from the dust in the air and rain, and it collected dirt. And the grower told me, soak these in salt water and then scrub the skin to make sure they're very, very clean before you use them. I'd never been told that before. And so I did. When I got home, I filled my sink with salt water and I let all of the fruit soak. And then I scrubbed them with a vegetable brush, and the skin was soft and clean, and I wasn't nervous at all to use that fruit. And it made me think about the fruit in my own yard that who knows what those squirrels maybe have done to that fruit. It woke me up to the idea of pathogens and making sure the fruit that I consume is clean. But that also led me to thinking like, oh man, I want to make sure that any fruit that I give anybody is also free from contamination and free from pathogens. Pathogens are unseen and they can be deadly. This week, we're going to look at Colossians chapter 3, verses 1 through 11. I'm just going to talk it through really quickly, and we'll see if I can hold this video maybe even shorter than I typically do. Okay, ready? I'm going to read it just from the workbook. It's page 27, Colossians 3, 1 to 11 in ESV. Since you have been raised with Christ, set your hearts on things above, where Christ is, seated at the right hand of God. Excuse me. Set your minds on things above, not on earthly things. For you died, and your life is now hidden with Christ in God. When Christ, who is your life, appears, then you will also appear with him in glory. Put to death, therefore, whatever belongs to your earthly nature: sexual immorality, impurity, lust, evil desires, and greed, which is idolatry. Because of these, the wrath of God is coming. You used to walk in these ways in the life you once lived, but now you must also rid yourself of all such things as these: anger, rage, malice, slander, filthy language from your lips. Do not lie to each other, since you have taken off your old self with its practices and have put on the new self, which is being renewed in knowledge in the image of its creator. Here there is no Gentile or Jew, circumcised or uncircumcised, barbarian, Scythian, slave or free, but Christ is all and is in all. So this portion is talking about setting our minds and our hearts on things that are above. And I love kind of this word picture that sort of emerges of this idea of you've died to your old self. Have you ever been in a situation maybe where, I don't know, maybe like a camp or on a mission trip or something, you had opportunity to take a shower and get clean, but you had to put dirty clothes back on? That's kind of yucky, right? The idea of when you have gotten clean and you've taken a shower, you want to also put on clean clothes. You don't want to have to put your dirty clothes back on. And that's a lot of what this is kind of saying is, while before the inside you, your clothing, the outside, the inside you was all dirty, and now you're clean. You've come into the kingdom of God. You are a new creature. You've been baptized and raised with Christ. You are new. And that new you, that clean you, needs new clean clothing. So the outside practices matched the inside reality. And so it's actually a really good way to understand why we say people's behavior changes when they come into the kingdom, when they have a saving relationship with Christ that is impacting their life and is changing the way they behave. It's just this idea of we don't want to put our dirty clothes back on. We don't want to put our dirty clothes back on. We want clean clothes for our new clean body. It's a good way to understand it. Right here where it says, put to death, therefore, whatever belongs to your earthly nature. Another way to say that is consider your body dead to these things. Now that's a little different, because I remember one time I was struggling with something when I was young, and I talked to my pastor about it, and I told her I was really struggling with this thing, and she said, well, just put it down. And I think in pictures. I immediately had this picture of me trying to wrestle Oscar the Grouch back into his trash can. You know, Sesame Street has Oscar the Grouch, and he gets out of his trash can, and me trying to force it down and force him into there and struggling with that. And I was putting him down. And then I had another picture that this one I think the Lord gave me of, like, I was carrying a brown bag and I just put it down and walked away. I just put it down. And so there wasn't the idea of don't stay in it and struggle with that thing, just put it down and walk away. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because in this phrase of put to death, there's kind of, we think of, put to death, I just stay in and I struggle with that thing. And really the idea, it's a more nuanced understanding to say, consider your body dead to these things. And so that's a really interesting take on it. I think it could be a life-altering way of viewing this, instead of struggling with it, just being like, I'm not going to carry this. I do not do these things. This body doesn't do that. And so it's a form of discipline that you're bringing into your life and saying, this body doesn't do that. This body doesn't do that. This household doesn't do that. And then that's it. And that's really, I know, easier said than done. And we all have areas where we struggle with a certain type of issue. But the real idea is just to work into your thinking, this body doesn't do that. So last week we talked about boundaries, setting up boundaries against intruders. And today we're talking more about discipline. So boundaries being discernment, and this week being more about our practices. So the idea of becoming an adult, the new term about adulting, and adulting is hard, is you're parenting yourself. Your goal as you raise children, as they become adults, is that you no longer have to parent that child because they have reached adulthood and they now parent themselves. Well, it's the same for us. There's a thing about you become your parents. Well, what if we also take that phrase and change it a little? Not that I become more and more like my mom or more like my dad, but I become my parent. I am the parent of myself. I am the person who needs to identify when something isn't good for me, needs to identify when I need to go to bed, need to identify, when I need to do something hard that I don't want to do, need to identify when I need to take a break and have some fun. That in parenting myself, in cooperation with the Holy Spirit and with the Lord, I am the one who determines the discipline of my life. And that's true for all of us. That's what's so I think also hard about, especially parenting, is as you have to relinquish that parenting to your child for them to make those decisions, they don't always make decisions that we agree with or want for them. And then to let them make their choices can be really, really hard, but it is something that we have to do, and let them learn to parent themselves as they reach that level of maturity. And it's not easy. And I'm sure our parents had a really hard time letting us make mistakes as well. So the idea of discipline, a lot of people, when they think of discipline, they think of being chastened or punished or corrected, and sometimes to an extreme that's harmful, where someone uses punishment or chastisement to maintain control over somebody, or to obtain control over someone. So it actually is, discipline does have to do with control and self-control. And so disciplining another, some of us have experienced harsh discipline or no discipline, and we don't have a good framework for what discipline is. So I want to talk to you really quickly about what discipline is. Discipline, as it relates to children, is to develop a child's behavior through instruction and practice. So you can tell a child to say please, or you can show a child to say please, but best is to do both. We say please, and then you also demonstrate that we say please, or we say no thank you. Have you ever maybe encountered someone, a young man raised in the South, and yes ma'am, no ma'am? It's just, in that culture, it's just really, really part of that vocabulary. It's been trained into them through modeling and through instruction. And that's discipline as we interact with our children. But discipline is also a branch of knowledge. Like someone has studied in a discipline. We can talk about it as a bachelor's degree, like what is your major, or even what is your minor. For me, when I went to grad school, it was about leadership. And I've studied leadership. It's a discipline track that I followed. And it means I do have a certain level of education and expertise there. Generally, it's when I see bad leadership, I immediately, oh, that's bad leadership, and kind of here's what's going on. Because that's been a discipline I studied along that discipline. Think of all the fields, all of the fields where there's a discipline, and it's a studying and a training and an educating of yourself in that track. Teaching, doctors, welding, mechanical, computer engineering, like my daughter's boyfriend's doing, just so many different tracks, and that field of study is a discipline. So it's a branch of knowledge. It's a code of conduct. That is a code of ethics. It's how we behave, how we, as this type of a person, we behave. We're seeing, even just this morning, there was another shooting, and at a traffic stop, and a police shooting, and the idea of there has to be code of conduct for peace officers, and it has to be followed, and because that is discipline, and that's what society is working towards, integrating new ways of training for peace officers, to ensure that life is not lost the way it's been lost. And it's a tragedy, and but we, not to judge that situation, because we don't know what actually happened. We have no idea what actually happened. So I'm not trying to judge this instance. I'm saying this instance is being used to talk about conduct and discipline and training. And when it's vital in this situation. Discipline is a method of practice. So have you ever heard practice makes perfect? I took piano lessons for a lot of years, and we would warm up doing scales. You do scales to warm up in all the different keys until it just becomes a habit for you. Or even in reading music, like it's been so long since I've read music, I don't know, I could not sit down and just read a piece of music and play it out because I'm out of practice. I don't have that discipline in my life anymore of playing piano by reading music. Finally, discipline is training to improve your strength or self-control. And so discipline is, as you can see, all of these things are talking about becoming more precise, becoming more strong, becoming more educated, doing away with the unnecessary things, discipline, training. And it's important. Okay, ladies, so that's what I have for you today. Just the idea that discipline, we're decontaminating our lives through discipline, or we're decontaminating our what's growing and what we give through discipline. Also, the idea of practices prevent, protect, prohibit pathogens. And so just the idea of keeping our life clean, that our outside practices match the inside new us, and this is accomplished through parenting ourselves and through discipline. I love you, ladies. Have a really great week, and I'll see you soon.